Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into our webinar, Making It Easier to Manage Ship-Shore Communication Channels with maritime connectivity provider KVH and shipping company HAMMONIA Reederei. Today we're joined by our guest speakers from KVH, David Trobhaig, Vice President of Sales of EMEA, Christy Orio, Senior Director of Application Engineering, and Dennis Becker, Head of IT with HAMMONIA Reederei. Questions can be left at the Q&A section, which will be answered after the presentation. And to start, here's Carl Jeffrey from Digital Ship.
So our topic today is how we manage multiple ship-shore communications channels. So as you all know, many shipping companies are adding low Earth orbiting satellite services like Starlink or 4G cellular or Wi-Fi from shore to their traditional VSAT or L-band services. And we might be moving away from single channel ship-shore communications for good. So we're going to look today at how we're going to make this easier to do. So some of the things we're going to look at is how to set up the systems with multiple communications routes. We're calling this hybrid communication systems. We're going to look at how to set up rules. So you want different data or applications to use different communication systems. We're going to look at how to get the highest data speed. So there's something we call network bonding. We'll look at how to set up systems for crew so they can take advantage of the low-cost systems when they're available without using up their bandwidth allocation by mistake in the first week of the month. We're going to look at how to ensure there's no gaps in sending sensor data. That might be particularly important for decarbonization sensor data with the reporting requirements getting more and more onerous. So first today, we're going to hear from David Trobhaig. He's the Vice President of Sales, Europe, Middle East and Africa with KVH, and he's going to explain why hybrid communications and network management should be a crucial part of your shipping company strategy. So David has been with KVH since 2014. He's based just outside Copenhagen. Then we're going to go to Hamburg to hear from Dennis Becker, Head of IT with HAMMONIA Reederei. They've got a fleet of over 100 container vessels, bulk carrier and multi-purpose vessels. He's going to share how the company implemented its hybrid communications gateway. So Dennis has been working in shipping IT since 2004, including at Oman National Ferries Company and FRS Group. And finally, we're going to go to Rhode Island in the States, and we're going to hear from Chris Diorio, who's the Senior Director of Application Engineering with KVH. He's going to discuss the technical side, including what you need to know before making a decision on hardware and services. So we're going to have roughly 10 minutes each from David, Dennis, and Chris. You can put questions in the Q&A box anytime you like. We'll probably take the questions at the end, unless our speakers want to provide answers by written in form while the other presentations are going on. So I'd like to invite David to start his talk.
Well, thanks very much, Carl, and welcome everybody. Let me just find the right screen to share here. That one, how's that look?
Yep, it's good.
Good. And then give myself the right view here. Okay. Well, let's dive into, well, that's your welcome slide, and that's your speakers. So we're going to get to my slides now. Let's dive into some of the key trends that are shaping this area of the shipping industry today. Firstly, we have hybrid connectivity, as you mentioned, Carl. Hybrid connectivity isn't really something new, really. It's a new term for something that we've always had, basically having backup carriers on the vessels in order to ensure a maximum availability of communication. But hybrid connectivity in its current form ensures vessels have consistent and reliable and always-on connectivity by combining different carriers and channels. These channels can work together seamlessly, and intelligent automatic switching between them drives maximum availability for the vessel, efficiency of bandwidth use, and cost savings, of course, not unimportantly. Picture here is from a little Greek chemical tanker that recently installed, as a Friday a week ago, installed our TrackNet 860 Starlink, and in addition to the two systems you can see here, it also had an Iridium Certus and the 5G LTE system. So very typical of what we see today in the market. Lots of carriers that are utilized for their own advantages. The expanded choices in connectivity vessels now have mean that there are so many ways you can combine this. Well, the exciting thing about it is that the backup options are no longer extremely slow compared to the primary carriers. They can be as fast, or at least they're much faster than they were in the past when you were bumping from a 2 or 4 megabit VSAT down to a 128 kilobits per second dial-up or FBB channel or something like that. So more choice means that you have much better solutions available to you as a shipping company. The last trend I want to mention is the expanded role of data on today's vessel. Data is really crucial for supporting operational needs. Could be weather routing, real-time monitoring of systems on board. It also plays a significant role in predictive analysis, and of course, crew welfare consumes a whole lot of data. And it's critical for transferring decarbonization data, which is becoming an increasingly important subject for compliance and stewardship of environmental issues. So those are some of the key trends we see on why hybrid connectivity and network management is becoming, well, remains a hot topic, I would say, for shipping companies. Moving on to network management, it's crucial to understand why this aspect is so important. Firstly, integration of these multiple channels is essential. Technologies like 5G, LTE, VSAT, Starlink, Wi-Fi, OneWeb, or simply shore-based Ethernet must work together efficiently or effectively. You would be surprised, even being a core functionality of these middleware solutions or SD-WANs or routers or whatever you want to call them, be surprised of the experiences you hear sometimes from customers that saying this core feature doesn't work very well. So you have people on VSAT that are going to FBB for backup, and then they're staying there for 2 months, even though the VSAT is available again. So this is a core functionality. It just has to work, and it has to work seamlessly. It has to work fast, so that you always have the best available connection. Second thing is optimized performance and security. When you have multiple WANs simultaneously, you need techniques like channel bonding and load balancing, so that the vessels can increase the utilization and the uptime, as well as the connection speeds and security, or ensure secure communications. On the inside, you also need to segment the networks and help reduce vulnerabilities to cyber attacks on the ship's network side. So those are quite important aspects of the network management side. And lastly, let's discuss simplification of network use. Single channel solutions, when people had those, if they had those, maybe they had them, but with a backup carrier, that was a very manual process to switch to. They were fairly easy to manage, but today they are simply outdated because you can't just rely on a single channel necessarily. Today's hybrid networks can be complex and therefore require management tools that are both simple and effective, as well as customizable to meet the unique needs of each vessel or each group of vessels within a fleet. So firstly, network management platforms have to be centralized, give you centralized controls over all the connectivity channels. So you don't have to switch between 10 different interface windows and to set up your systems and manage your channels. So this will allow for streamlined operations and save people like Dennis's valuable time and ease their daily work. Through this single pane of glass or through this single access, they can set up policies and implement policies across all the vessels. This gives real-time access to reporting, facilitating quicker and more informed decision making. Secondly, automated processes reduce the need for manual interventions, enhancing the overall efficiency. These systems have to be intelligent, so they can automatically switch between channels based on predefined criteria, such as data use or protocols being used or other scenarios. And of course, they have to be able to generate real-time reports, so you know what's going on the vessel. And I think that the last ingredient I want to mention is the user friendliness. The interfaces have to be intuitive and accessible via multiple interfaces, such as mobile or cloud platforms, to make it easy for the shore staff and for the crew members to manage the connectivity. For the IT staff, to have customizable dashboards that allow them to tailor them to their specific needs on each vessel, and to simplify training for the onboard personnel who needs to ensure that crew and staff on board can self-manage, while IT staff can focus on optimizing IT operations and business applications on the vessel instead of having to spend their time allocating megabyte quota to crew members. So in conclusion, by focusing on a unified management platform with automated processes and user-friendly interfaces, we can significantly simplify maritime connectivity, make it more effective, and making it easier to handle. So those were my words. From here, we'll hand it over to Dennis Becker.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Dennis Becker. I'm the head of IT for HAMMONIA, as well as the managing director of MARATEC. HAMMONIA is an operating company for own vessel as well as third party for leading liner companies based in Hamburg, Germany. 2020, we founded our subsidiary MARATEC together with another shipping company to combine our resources and develop our infrastructure for the further upcoming requirements and needs. MARATEC is handling for us today the day-to-day IT operations and special projects like the rollout of new gateways and further. We're supporting today over 100 vessels with our team, starting from a simple container over multi-purpose with cranes and so on, to tankers and even small cruise liners with demanding passengers instead of simple cargo. Next. Next slide.
David, are you there?
Yeah. We are having the demand of more connectivity today. We're seeing that already longer, since the offices and so on are equipped with fiber. The vessels are asking, of course, the same. The first question that we're often getting in interviews of crew is, how much data do we provide for the crew? We wanted to go with that way. We wanted to offer more. The charterers are asking for Teams calls with the captain, or safety department is bringing medical equipment in that is calling directly the hospital. We wanted to increase capacity, not just also for business or for the crew, but also simple for ourselves to support the vessels remotely even more and enroll modern software like we have in the office today. As a third-party manager, we cannot decide all alone, and sometimes we just limited to deal with existing carriers or gateways. But we still wanted to build something around that so that we can control and supervise that through all the fleet. Cost is always an issue as an owner as well as a third party. So that even with a small budget, limited time, especially at takeovers or limited resources, we wanted to have a quick deployment and an easily supporting options in the day-to-day operations. The risk of cyber attacks are higher than ever before, and we wanted to be prepared, doing network segmentation, doing all kinds of, but easily to deploy that through older, newer vessels, but then still permanently monitor them through the whole fleet. Next one, please. We really see the COMBOX Edge here as a game changer for us. It's a really small and reliable device. We can even send it out with the TSI together in the hand luggage and connect it with the crew on board remotely with just a really small effort to get the vessel online. We can do all the preparation beforehand and have the central management as an overview. With the multivan, we can handle and combine all the kind of different connectivities that we have on board today, from VSAT, Starlink, or Iridium, and even set up each individually as per bandwidth, rules, or tariffs. All depends always on the budget, so it's just always a matter what will the owner or resell pay there. The greatest part, I would say, in my opinion, is the option to automate easily tasks by creating condition-based routes and routing. For example, we can just drop the bandwidth of Starlink by 50% when certain limits are reached. This is helping us to still support the crew with modern communication, but also keeping our bandwidth and to keep the control of that. It always happened that there will be more needs of data transfer, but still we need to react before we receive the invoice. As well as the self-service option for crew to sign up right after they arrive to the vessel. This is one of the best 24/7 support option that we can offer to the crew, that they don't need to wait any longer for us to confirm that. It happens all on the vessel automatically with the captain and with the crew. Due to the maritime input that KVH is giving into the product, we believe that there will be strong and future development that is really relevant for our maritime industry, and that it is not an office product. They understand this better than anybody else around. Next, please. We see that constant communication means for us more digitalization and faster exchange of data, and as well as keeping all in the loop of the information. This is what we are achieving now with the multivan and several kinds of different connections throughout the whole globe. Our takeovers and retrofits can just be done faster. Normally it took us and the crew several hours to equip the vessel with the equipment and so on. Now with these kind of small gateway and any kind of connection, we can have just the network back online within an hour after arrival, which helps us a lot to reduce cost on that side, but also support the operation that is even doing a takeover directly starting on again. With the optimized traffic management, we can bring more value for our business as well as for the crew connecting with their family, but at the same time still keeping our budgets. We are prepared and not limited for any kind of future connection. We see Kuiper, we see OneWeb, and for sure there will be many more around coming. So for us, that means it is a secure start into the future, and whatever comes next around, we can just connect and either add additionally or replace something old style. Last but not least, we see that for the cyber security, it is a highly advantage with additional rule sets, with a globe-wide monitoring and an overview that helps us to minimize the risk, and in case of an attack or of a breach, we are aware of it and we can react. Thanks. That's from my side. I hand over to Chris.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. I am Chris Diorio. I'm director of the application engineering team here at KVH. We have a global team, Denmark, Singapore, Greece, the States, all over. What our team does at KVH is we work to help our customers with integrated solutions, custom integrated solutions, and we help them do the testing technically. So we'll sit down with the customer, we'll listen to their requirements. There might be some KVH equipment, some third-party equipment, some legacy equipment that they already have on the vessel. We'll help them design the vessel network and consult with them, and then come up with a design and a drawing, and then help them implement that solution. So today, what we're going to talk about is some of the technical challenges that we run into while we're working with customers, and the things that they ask for, or the things that we know that they will need to put a new solution on a new vessel. And one of the most challenging parts is controlling the data usage. So a lot of people rushed out last year and put Starlinks on their vessel and said, oh boy, we got to get the Starlink, it's great. And they had it on there for a few months, and they started getting massive overages. And it was going over all the time, and they realized that they needed some sort of control. And so I think the Starlink is a very fast car, but they don't sell it with brakes. So we need brakes for that. And the CommBox Edge, which is one of the products that KVH has, gives you those brakes and gives you those control of your quota. So for example, you can go ahead and take, say you're on a 1 terabyte plan with Starlink. A lot of people would say, okay, so I've got the 1 terabyte plan. We don't want to go over 1 terabyte. How do we do that? What I always suggest is that you want to break it up per day or per week on your quota. And then, like Dennis had referenced previously, you can either control that usage by, as they start using per day, you could decrease the bandwidth, say cut the speed in half, or cut it more than a half, or you could control applications, and you could say, okay, we're going to go ahead and limit the type of applications that can be used. So how we control data in this slide, you see there are 3 different ways. So if we start with the first way, user allocations, we give a certain amount of we give a certain amount of daily usage to each user. This works very well for crew control, where you can say, okay, I know I want to use 1 terabyte my 1 terabyte a month. Maybe you want to back down that to maybe 900 gigabytes because you want to leave a little bit of headroom there. Then divide that, by 30 days. So figure out you got about 30 gigabytes a day, and then divide that by your 22 crew members that you have approximately on a container ship. And somewhere around there is what you're going to set your allocation per crew member. And so by breaking it down, you can get to more control. And you can do the same thing with rate limiting. If you don't want to manage user allocations, you can get into rate limiting. You can say, allow 30 gigabytes per day. And after they've used half of their daily allocation, cut their speed in half. After they've used 75% of their daily allocation, cut their speed down to a quarter. And then maybe once they get to 90% of that allocation, only allow email and crucial websites for the vessel. So all of those things are possible by being able to control the speeds and actually change the configuration dynamically as the quota use goes up, and we call that quota control. And as I mentioned before, you can do the same thing with applications, where as they use 50%, you could block streaming and block social media. And then once they get to 90%, email only and crucial websites. So really, you need to have a way to control data usage. And I think one of the big other things that I'll mention about controlling data usage is you can't put it all on the ICT or the IT people, because you're always chasing. You're chasing to say, how did this person get around the system? Or how did this person overuse? What you want to do is you want to assign that back to the individual users. Because if the individual users have the responsibility where it's their data they're using, instantly they all become IT experts. You know, you could send them paperwork and white papers on how to, you know, disable the background data on their phone so they won't overuse, and they would never look at it. But as soon as it's their data, they instantly become IT experts. They know how to turn off every background thing on their phone. So I think it's important to pass that along to them so they feel ownership of the usage. That way you'll spend less time chasing around. Next slide. Okay, one of the other things that's happening now is we're getting multiple high-speed connections. You might have a dual Starlink, so you might have dual VSATs on your vessel, and you'd want to understand the difference between balancing and bonding. And this is an important difference. So if you had, let's take the example of two VSATs, two Starlinks. We'll take two Starlinks, and we'll say hypothetically each Starlink runs at about 200 megabits per second download. Now, if you're doing balancing, what happens is each computer or each session on that vessel picks one path or the other path. So both systems are online, and it will say, okay, if this one customer goes to Yahoo, they'll go out this VSAT. This customer gets their email, they'll go out this VSAT. So if you have somebody who runs a speed test on the vessel, they're going to go either this way or that way. Now it's going to balance the traffic from the vessel on each one, but it doesn't combine the speed. So if someone runs a speed test, they're going out one or the other, they're going to see about 200 megabits per second on their speed test. Now, if you do what's called bonding, that puts both of those connections together, and it needs a shoreside host, and they come through a tunnel and they connect on the shore. And then once they connect on the shore, the traffic from that shore side interweaves the traffic back together and sends it as a single connection out to the internet. So when you're bonded, now you get a speed increase because you get web optimization. Some people call that PEP, performance enhancing proxy. You'll get that speed increase, but you'll also be seen as one connection. So now when you go ahead and do a speed test, you're going to get closer to 400 megabits per second. So, and that will also dynamically balance that. If one of those terminals has a weaker signal, it'll put more traffic onto the one with the better signal. So you'll get dynamic balancing and dynamic bonding. And the bonding has the added benefit of the web optimization, sometimes known as PEP. And you can do that through like connections. So you wouldn't want to bond a Starlink with a VSAT because the latency is too different. So where you have a very low latency Starlink and you have a higher latency VSAT, you wouldn't want those packets to be going over. They'd be waiting for the other packets to get weaved back together on the shore side, and it would actually decrease your performance. So you want to bond connections with like characteristics. So if you were to do two Starlinks and a cellular, those would bond well together, or two VSATs, those would bond well together. So when you're looking at bonding, make sure you take that into account. So number 3 here, SD-WAN and virtual private networks. We talked about this a little bit in bonding. What you want to make sure is there's a lot of companies that say they offer SD-WAN, but these SD-WAN solutions are really built for terrestrial networks. They're not built for maritime networks, and they're not built for networks that have higher latency. For example, even though Starlink latency is low on the coast, when you get into the middle of the ocean and you have to use the intersatellite links, your Starlink latency can go up to almost 200 milliseconds. So you really need optimization, even on the Starlink, to have good TCP performance. So something like a FortiGate, where it can do SD-WAN, and it's great at security, they have no WAN optimization and no PEP. So you have to add another device to get that. Otherwise, your TCP performance on VSAT or on Starlink, when you're going through the multi-satellite links, or on Iridium, is not going to be what it needs to be. You're never going to achieve the bandwidth that you're actually paying for, because you don't have the WAN optimization, and the TCP performance is just not going to be there. So you want to make sure that when you're working with somebody, and we have this in the CommBox Edge product, that you have WAN optimization to help out with those high latency situations when they arise, and you don't have bad TCP performance. So those terrestrial systems don't always include what's needed for a maritime environment. Next slide. So in summary, you want to be able to offer, when you're choosing a network management solution, you want to make sure it offers simple prioritization at a minimum. That would be like connection switching and or prioritizing some traffic over another traffic. You want to make sure that it can do balancing as well as bonding. But this third bullet is crucial. You want to make sure you get performance enhancing proxy or WAN optimization. It's really going to boost your data speeds. It's going to make Starlink faster, believe it or not. If you turn WAN optimization on Starlink, you're going to get a faster speed test on Starlink than you would running Starlink alone. And that's surprising to many people. But it's also good for VSAT, and it's just in the maritime environment, you need that. You want to create and manage multiple LANs. This is very important for security, to have network separation. You don't want somebody who gets infected on a crew LAN then to have a problem where that infects the operations LAN or the bridge PC. You also want to make sure you can have application awareness. And we have that in our CommBox Edge product with a DPI engine, deep packet inspection. Every packet that goes through that device is identified as it's Facebook, it's YouTube, it's streaming media, it's social media, whatever it might be. So then you can get reports on that, and you can see where all your traffic is going and what devices are using those traffic. And lastly, you want to have a solution that offers you remote access. If you need to get in to do some troubleshooting on the master's PC, you want to be able to get in there. If the third-party navigation company needs to go and do an upgrade on the navigation PC, you want to get in there, or do an upgrade on the dynamic positioning system. You want to be able to give them access to remotely get in there, control that access so they can do what's needed, and then they're able to disable that access for security. So all of these points are things that you need to look for in a network solution and in a network design. Thank you.
Oh, that's great, Chris. So I guess we'll go to the Q&A session. So if you want to stop slide sharing, and I'll invite Dennis and David to put your cameras on. So if anybody in the audience wants to put in questions, we don't have any so far, but I've got a list I've been putting together. I'd like to start with Dennis. I mean, it's a general question about the stuff that's happening in the shipping industry, because it occurs to me that there's lots of changes happening in the wider industry which all drive this. I mean, the whole remote, operating ships remotely, also bringing remote expertise into the ships. That all needs all these high latency, low latency connections, plus hear about crew shortages. So you want the crew to have Starlink, so they want to work on ships more, plus whole decarbonisation always needs all kinds of different data. Do you want to sort of share some thoughts on, you're on mute, by the way, on what you see in the wider industry and how this is connecting with all of this?
At the end, it is a clear requirement that we have to bring more connectivity on. Yeah, as you're saying, decarbonization and all that all runs with software, with certain reports that have to be in time, and there cannot be exception to say, yeah, we are not connected and we will bring that up later on. And as well for the crew, if we don't provide that in a safe and organized way, the crew will just go around and buy themselves a Starlink on their own and step that up on the vessel. And that's something that we surely don't want, because at the end maybe it happens even they interfere with our network and breach it. So there is no way around that to provide solution, no?
Well, along the latency, so when I was thinking through when you'd want very fast connection, I guess logging onto software from the ship that's remote, I guess that's where you want really low latency. Did you say low?
Yeah, low latency. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
fast,
Well,
yeah.
today we're having servers on board, but as you see in the office environment, most of the servers they're going to be replaced by cloud solution. No? I think sooner or later we'll have the same happening on the vessels. No, if we provide proper connectivity, we can do that. It will be cost savings, and as well, it will be modernizing all the fleet easily, you know.
Well, and all the trends seem to be far more and more of this. Oh, we've got a couple of questions coming in. I'll just read them through. I mean, it seems like this is the way everything's going, more and more of this, and yeah, no doubt about it. So Joop, I think that's a Dutch spelling, Groot from SMT Shipping in the Netherlands is asking about, what about the security of the communication? Sounds like combining the business network and the crew network has all kinds of security issues. I mean, we didn't combine them. We're having them as separate LANs, I think. I don't know if
Yeah,
this is
that's correct. Network separation is very important. And I think you need to have all of your networks separate. So some vessels have a separate network for navigation, a separate OT network, a separate IT network, a separate wireless network, separate crew network. So having that network separation is very important to compartmentalize any problem that might occur on a network. And it also allows you to give different levels of access and control to those networks. For example, one of the things that we do where we always have a separate crew network, but some customers have requested a button in an emergency. They can disable the crew network in an emergency. Maybe there's a fire on board. They want to have all the bandwidth for communication for the emergency. So we definitely recommend having network separation. I think that's a must-have first security step that everyone should be taking for their vessel.
the networks come together just at the COM box, I suppose. There's no possibility of anything going from one network to another.
They'll come together there, but they'll be separate networks, and the firewall rules will not allow traffic to pass between the two networks. So they'll either be separate networks, or they'll be separate what's called VLANs. And so traffic from one network can't get onto the other network, even though they're administered by the same switching, but they're all logically separate.
Oh, okay. So we've got a question from Henry Manor, who's from a company called Pentanet in Florida. I've just been looking at your website, Henry, so I see you're offering a service which combines cellular with Starlink, and that's what you're asking about here. I don't know if that makes you a competitor or a supporter to KVH, but he's asking if you've got any opinions on connecting Starlink with cellular communications. I don't know if anybody...
I'll take a swing at it first. It's a great idea. I think when the Starlink gets opted out, especially if you're in the maritime priority plan on Starlink, I think we see a lot of people also running maybe like a terrestrial antenna of Starlink. So when they're running out of their maritime priority traffic, they'll go over to the regular traffic of the Starlink. But then to be able to go to cellular when you're close to shore is a great idea. So, I mean, anything that gives you the flexibility and helps you control costs, I think is a good plan.
Oh,
yeah. I just like to add that's the advantage that, whatever vessel or whatever setup you have, you can just do it. You have the China route where you work without the Starlink. You have the Nordic route where you have maybe then the global plan and so on. So all these possibilities you have, and you can just configure. No?
Well, Dennis, are you able to say what your ships are actually doing, or is that commercially sensitive? I mean, are you keeping VSAT on all your ships, or I don't know if that's maybe a secret.
Yeah, of course. Right now we're keeping definitely VSAT because we're having trades to China, we're having trade to India, and you know we have to have a reliable base. But of course we're adding the 4G. We're using it. We're using the Starlink. Most of the routes in between US and Europe they're on Starlink only, but the VSAT will be always there to support in case something fails. No?
There's still lots of parts of the world you can't use Starlink. I don't know what the latest is, but people say definitely Russian waters, don't they? But
I think they announced their 100th territory being licensed this week. I think it was Sierra Leone joining. So then that leaves still another like 60, 70 countries if you go by UN lists. So there are areas where we can't use Starlink. So it's good to have secure backups and safe means of communication.
Yeah, David, I think you must have a lot of Middle Eastern customers since you're the EMEA manager. So that's a quite different communication requirements down there as well, isn't it? I suppose. I know cellular roaming used to be very expensive. I don't know if that's still.
It is still, yeah. You're easily looking at like $10 a gigabyte still for cellular service down there. So VSAT is very popular in the Middle East. Starlink's also because there's a lot of vessels that leave the territory and come back. So they still look into Starlink, but of course they can't use it territorially.
Well, and I was just trying to understand the shipping company perspective. I mean, David, you're the sales guy, and you must have a lot of conversation with customers. So I guess most companies have been under pressure to put in Starlink by now, or either installed it, and then I guess perhaps they install it and find that it's much harder than they expected to manage everything. Is that where you think a lot of shipping companies
I wouldn't say there's any pressure. I think there's a lot of desire.
Right.
It is really it's really popular and it's working so well that there's really no reason not to try it. It's a great service. Sorry, what was the question?
Well, then they install it, but then they realize it's a headache to manage everything, which is what leads to these.
Yeah, I think we've all heard about the horror stories. So even with the short time it's had on the market, people are already aware that they need to control it. I mean, there were stories of the early days where companies burned through 1 terabyte or 5 terabytes in a week. So I think there's a good awareness already that's a necessity to control it.
Yeah, I think it's you. I can't remember who said Starlink is a fast car with no brakes, but it's good.
Yeah, that was Chris.
That was me. Yeah. And the other thing too is the it's if you can control it, obviously it's great. But you also need to think about as soon as you pull into China, you got to switch over to something else. And then what level of experience do you want what do you want the vessel's experience to be? And can you get them ready for that? Can you get their expectations set to say, so they know they're coming into China and they're going to have less bandwidth after they just crossed the ocean and they had very high speed bandwidth. So I think it's not just a matter of designing the system so it will work in all these different places, maybe VSAT only in China and then Starlink when you're crossing the ocean, but setting the expectations of the crew so they get there and they don't give you a call and say it's broken. Well, it's not broken. It's working as it designed in that area. So there's a lot more expectation setting that you have to work through with the crew so they understand that the technology is switching between different type of connections.
Well, and on the manageability, so I guess in the old days of Inmarsat, you didn't have to do any managing barely of different systems. But now, I mean, this having to worry about aligning VSAT with another high latency connection on the other way around. It's a lot of hassle for IT managers these days, which I'm sure they'd much rather. I mean, I get the point about crew managing their own communications, but the business stuff is also pretty hard to do as well, isn't it? I mean, I suppose the aim here is to automate all these things and make it easier. I don't know if anybody wants to share perspective.
No, I think that's our finest job, to make things easier and less stressful for the IT teams in shipping companies, because God knows they have few resources usually. So I don't know, Dennis, you can probably talk better to that.
Yeah, and at the end, the last thing that we want is at the end having a big bill, and then to go back and to discuss. No, we want to have the technical solution still running our services and just not running into that problem. It's really looking at the solution there and using what we have. We have unlimited channels and so on, but of course controlling in our case 100 vessels going different areas. You need to automate something because otherwise you're just running an administrative task afterwards, no?
Yeah, we hear a lot of shipping company CEOs. They're so pleased they do video conferencing with the crew, but then I guess it's on Starlink and it jumps from one satellite to another and it loses it. And I guess that's when you probably get a call from the CEO saying, "What the hell's going on here?" I suppose it's a kind of a new trouble you never had before, I suppose, isn't it?
And that's what you expect from the office. So everybody copies just the same for the vessels, no? That's you have your fiber in the office. You want to be online, and why not on sea as well? No?
Wow. Before we started, Dennis, you were talking about the actual installation. I mean, that's also a great story. You were saying the crew did a lot of it themselves, and I don't know if you want to share some, tell the audience about
Yeah, of course, whenever we attend the vessel and so on, it involves cost. So we try to involve the vessel and the crew, and they are happy to help there. We're preparing sets and just shipping the material out, and as soon as it's arrived, the vessel will contact us and will say, okay, we'll do that. We follow your instruction, and that makes it just more easy there to achieve a high level of connected vessels with Starlink, with new gateways and so on, and it's not creating that ball of cost where everybody will say, yeah, we'll see how that ends. No, we are already there, just with a low cost solution to start up. No, was really helpful for us.
Oh, that's great. I mean, maybe we could talk about the ComBox a little bit. I mean, you were great. You didn't promote your products too much in the talk, but just for the audience to know. So how does this fit into a shipping company? So if once they've installed Starlink, they think this is harder than we thought. And so the ComBox is something they can fit and that will help them manage everything. I don't know if you want to explain to Chris or David. So what exactly is this offering to people, do you think?
Yeah, I can take a little bit of that. So the ComBox is really the ComBox Edge, which is our new generation of the ComBox, is completely cloud managed, and it's able to handle the new hybrid environment where you have multiple connections. It can handle bonding those connections. It can handle switching between the connections, but it also has different policy rules per connection. So you can have a certain amount of traffic allowed or different applications allowed on VSAT, but then a different set of things allowed on Starlink, and even maybe a smaller set of things allowed on Iridium. So all of your connections can have different policies of what's allowed or what's blocked. The other really interesting thing in the ComBox Edge, and I haven't seen a lot of other devices that can do this, is that if you have two networks, say you have an operations and a crew network, and suppose you only want your crew to be on Starlink, but never go on VSAT, because you just want the VSAT for the operations land, you can set up a different priority of connection switching for different networks on the vessel. So you can say that network, the crew network only uses the Starlink, but the operations network will go from Starlink to VSAT to Iridium. So you can set those things up differently. So there's a lot of flexibility for controlling, managing, switching. The captive portal with crew allocation is in there. Remote access is in there. So I think that we've come to a good balance with the ComBox Edge of having the things that we need without making it overly complex and having a lot of things that we don't. And so that's a good balance, and it seems to be very popular right now in the marketplace.
It looks like you have a customer's testimonial here, David. I'll just read this one out. So this is Marzena Kurpiewska, who I just saw on your LinkedIn, you're head of IT with Viga Reederei. So she said, I had the pleasure of taking part in a project of mounting VSAT on a ship. I'd like to confirm the high level of support from KVH side and the intuitive administration of the COM-box. Sorry to interrupt. I thought I'd.
Oh, that's good. We did not pay Marcina to say that. So
No.
thank you very much, Marcina, for those comments.
You're going to say something, David.
I'd like to comment on what Chris just said, because as a non-IT person, I'm just overwhelmed with how intuitive and easy it is to work with the COM-box. By all means, I'm not an expert on setting up and configuring IT networks, and I'm really impressed with the COM-box and how easy it is. The level of customization and flexibility you have with it, it's just second to none.
That sounds like very fiddly, just how what it does. Just different applications, different routes, a lot of settings. I mean, I've never seen it. I'm just imagining.
Can't even begin to explain how many different options you have on configuring your rules. It doesn't have to be complex, but you can really make it fine-grained, your controls, if you want it.
Well, Dennis, I think you already said you found it very easy to use. Would you want to? Do you set 100 ships at once as policy if you want to, and then people can put their own afterwards? Or
Yeah, that you know, it is a kind of Lego, no? You just, you know, put the parts together, you design, that's the thing, and you have even the, you know, the colorful interface. It's not more like the 80s. So it is really simple. You don't need to train your technician much in that, because it follows the basic rules. But it gives you a lot of you know, direct input and a response when you change something and so on. So it is really it's a kind of playing around at the beginning, and you easily get certified with that what you're doing, and you directly see what approach it has to the crew and so on. So you know, that's why we are impressed with that, and we would never have achieved, you know, a rollout and so on so fast if it's not that simple to implement something. And especially with Starlink, yes, we're also somebody who spent a lot on extra overage and so on at the beginning. But that is something, you know, that we can control now there.
Oh, you're looking after 100 ships, so you can't have many minutes of your time every week for any ship, I suppose. It must be very automated, this
Yeah,
themselves.
And you know, at the end, we don't want to waste traffic for application that don't need to run over Starlink. There's a lot of applications that can go with the normal visa that we anyhow paying, but you know, give them the good traffic to something that needs it. Teams calls, as you said, you know, I don't want to have the CEO calling. I prefer he has a stable line. And normally, you know, you can stream with a lower bandwidth and so on. That there's no problem. So the crew is also happy with that. And even if you increase the crew budget because you're just, you know, optimizing your traffic, they will be just happy. You know?
Oh, no, that's fantastic.
If I can make a little spot, anyone who wants to have a bit of a flavor of how this works, there's a couple of good videos on YouTube that our technical documentation guy made. Just little 3 or 4 minute videos on how to set up application-based rules or how to set up speed-based rules. Really very demonstrative of how easy it is to work with.
Yeah, and I guess monitoring as well. People have got to check they're not spending too much money, or people aren't having too much difficult time, or using their quotas too early, or I suppose it's also part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, we have about 7 minutes left. I mean, perhaps we'll just share our perspectives on where we're going with this. I mean, I can see far more demand for different types of communication of all kinds, and every communication having a different sort of flavor and a different need. But also a lot happier crew. I mean, I don't know if anybody, maybe if we do it, Chris and then Dennis and then David, if you want to give a closing thoughts of it.
No, I think it really comes down to control. I think you need to have control over because you have these more complex systems, you need to have control over it, and then you need to have visibility into what's going on the different networks and with the different devices. And I think if you can get a dashboard when you're managing a large fleet, and you can set a standard so each vessel is the same, so you can manage them easily, then you have some visibility through reporting, and you have control, those are really the core things that you need. And so thank you very much.
Yeah, Dennis, just share some thoughts on where we're going for the next few years with this.
I think we'll just, increase. We'll have more bandwidth at the end. We will have more demand. Like in an office, I can just, repeat myself there again and again. It will just, and at the end, if you don't provide it, you will not find crew, you will not find charters or whatever. It will just go up as we see everywhere else. And at the end, we need to provide that. And of course, as easier we can manage, as easier it is to apply it at the end, for all kind of businesses there. No? Thanks, Dahl.
David, do you want some closing thoughts?
Just a bit more of the same, you could say. I only see the data consumption going one way, and with higher speeds, lower latency, you see more and more applications and software being deployed on board, more and more enterprise kind of software, even has an effect on IT organizations around shipping companies, that they start to go away from having vessel IT and office IT. Maybe not there's just IT in some companies. So it has organizational effects, which is quite interesting. But it just means that there are more applications to manage for the IT team. So therefore, network management has to be easy as well. When there's more work to do, you have to have something that's easier than it was before.
Oh, well, I think this is one of the most optimistic webinars we've had for a while. There's a technology that's solving a problem and seems to really work. So, yeah, thank you ever so much, Dennis, Chris, and David, and thank you, Marzena, for your comments as well. And that's great. And I shall pass back to Farah for the closing words. Cheers.
Thanks, Carl.
Oh.
We'd like to thank our guest speakers, David Trop-Haig, Chris Diorio, and Dennis Becker, and also to all our viewers. We'll be sending you a YouTube video link soon with contact details to keep in touch if you have any more questions. Our next webinar is on the 20th of June with Emerson. You can sign up with the link we posted on our chat or through our website. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.